Hi, I'm Amy Andrews.
And I'm Jennifer St. George, and welcome to How to Watch Movies Like a Writer. Today we are looking at one of my all-time favorite movies, The Princess Bride. So, Amy, do you love this one as much as I do?
I love this movie as much as you do, possibly even more, Jennifer. I don't want to compete with you or anything, but it is one of my all-time favorite movies. I saw this movie as a like a support movie to another movie at the drive-in when I was like a teenager, right? And it was
Oh,
way, way better than whatever movie we went to. I can't even remember the movie we went to see, but I remember this movie as a support movie. Um, Love it. It's from William Golding's book of the same name, and it was directed by Rob Reiner, who directed
yeah,
When Harry Met Sally.
yeah,
So he's kind of got these sort of chops as well. Yes, it's certainly it's a real it's multi-layered, isn't it?
yeah. And what, in terms of why do you think it works just so brilliantly? I mean, there's one thing for me that just stands out above everything
Mm.
else in terms of thinking about it like a writer. Is there one thing for you? Like for me, it's all about the dialogue.
Oh yes, the dialogue is brilliant. It's really good. I've not read the book. It'd be interesting to see um
Yeah,
what the how close the book is, like, dialogue wise, but the dialogue is top notch. I just made, like, pages of notes on the dialogue just as I was going
exactly.
along. Brilliant stuff. I think it's I was thinking about the tropes, what kind of tropes are in this movie, because it's not
Yeah,
up to this point we've mostly done romances, right? And whilst this
that's
movie
right.
is a romance or a love story, that's not just what it's about, right? It's got all these different elements sort of to the plot. And to me, it's a lot about, like, they keep saying it's about true love and noble
Yeah,
causes and honor. And it's a real, I don't know if spoof is the right word on a fairy tale, but it's very over the top, melodramatic, kind of
yeah.
black humorish almost, like trying to take
Lots of
the piss out of
irony,
fairy
lots of,
tale. Yeah,
yeah, satire, a satire.
satire. Thank you. That's what I'm after. Satire. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting because it tells the Princess Bride story, but there's also that lovely, story between the grandfather and the grandson, and how he's imparting wisdom without imparting wisdom. So he's reading him a story, but it's all giving him all these important messages about life and true love and, things like that. It's
Yeah.
interesting with the
And
trope. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, it's building the grandfathers. I wrote down a list of kind of plots, sort of subplots, and I thought at the end, actually, the grandfather grandson is a subplot as well, because it's like your grandfather's coming over. Oh no, do I have to? I'm sick. I don't really want to spend time with him. To, like, seeing their relationship really develop into something much deeper over the course of him reading that book.
Exactly. It's all, yeah, beautiful. So back to tropes. One of the interesting ones is that really we start off with Buttercup being a whole damsel in distress, don't we? I mean, she doesn't have a lot of agency to start with. She's just being, taken by
She does
men,
not.
and then, yeah, and then, saved by men. And it's not until she has that sort of monologue where she finally stands up for herself at the end that we actually see her break out of that damsel in distress type of trope, if we're going to call it that. So in terms of a modern day love story, you'd want to see a little bit more of that in the kind of things we write, but because it's fairy tale and fantasy, we can kind of live with the fact that she doesn't have much agency all the way through, but she does get there in the end. So I like that.
No, and I think, and I don't know, but I wonder. I think it's deliberate, because this book is like, a satire of a fairy tale, right?
Yeah.
And so in all fairy tales of yore, women were the helpless ones, we were the damsels in distress, we were the ones being rescued, right? And they really play into those tropes in this movie. Like, she literally does everything practically, fall over and break her ankle, right? She's rescued from everything. She's rescued 3 times by him in the fire swamp, like, while he's being, like, mauled to death by a rodent of unusual size. She was just standing there and watching it all happen. Like,
I know, I wanted her to pick up the stick and, do something, but she doesn't do anything. She just stands there.
he's kind of recovering from it, like attacking him, and it walks towards her, and she was like, Wesley, and like then he has to go and like pull it back from her instead of her like whacking it over the head with a stick. So there's all of these things, and you're right, she's slowly, and I think that's a deliberate choice again, because it's about subverting all those sort of tropes where the woman was always the one kind of in distress, and seeing her arc and kind of become, they've really played up all those well-known fairy tale-y kind of mores, played into them, satire, like made them into a satire, made them look ridiculous, gone really over the top. There's so much over the topness about this movie, but it's just so, I mean, it's not subtle, but I think the meaning behind it is subtle. The way that the kind of subversion is subtle.
Yeah, and it's so charming. Like the whole thing is charming. Got that real oldie worldy, fantasy fairy tale charm about it, which I just love. So just going to the opening, we do the opening, the sort of the part with the granddad and the grandson, but going into the opening of the Princess Bride story, the setup is very quick and they're only together for a moment. And but the whole theme of the story is, do you think love like this happens every day? This is something very special. And then the movie goes on to deliver on the promise. So that's a nice way to set, how openings are so important in books and in movies. What are we being promised?
True. And how little time you actually need to get across backstory. I mean, that's right. We talk about backstory, don't we? About openings, about how not to bog things down, and that this movie is like a great example of how you can get a lot of information across in a very short amount of time with very little, kind of words, dialogue, action. It's just as far as like a love to me, really a lot of the romance of it is over within a couple of minutes, right? The romance bit where we would, as romance writers, focus on. Our story would be about the Wesley Buttercup story, falling in love, and that would be kind of our story. But that's like 2 minutes at the beginning, right? That's their kind of normal world. They fall in love and everything's wonderful. And then Wesley gets that call to adventure, right? He's like, well, I've got nothing. I'm nobody. So I'm going to go off and make my fortune. I'm going to come back for you, sort of thing. So straight away, it springboards straight into goes from the normal world to the, to the next kind of big adventure world very, very quickly.
Yeah. And isn't it when we judge competitions or we read entries into competitions, you do see a lot of beginner writers put sometimes even 3 chapters of backstory before they get into the story. And it's just so important to this, as you say, is a wonderful masterclass in just set it up and off we go.
Yes, actually, it'd be interesting to read the book, because I wonder if that first bit was actually in the book at all, or if it was told as a prologue. Because to me, those first few minutes of film, they're the prologue, right? They're the setup. Okay, they're falling in love. Now, bang. Then we're off to the races, kind of thing, as it goes on. Yeah.
So it's really interesting if we then talk a little bit about characterization. I mean, we do see an arc with Buttercup, but we don't get to know her particularly well. But Indigo Montoya, we get to know quite well. And he's a secondary character, but he's probably, I mean, for me, he's almost the most brilliant thing in it. I love him.
Yeah, he's kind of the heart of the story in lots of ways, isn't he? I think really reflecting, because there's a huge theme of honor and honorableness throughout the movie, and I think he's almost like the heart of that, right? Because you're right, I was saying earlier how like ostensibly the story is, the Princess Bride, it's sort of Wesley and Buttercup story, but actually there's 2 other subplots working. There's the Inigo Montoya subplot, and there's the Humperdinck subplot, kind of create a war between Gilda and Florin, right? So you've got all those kind of different subplots sort of working, and then of course you've got the grandfather-grandson sort of subplot as working as well. And each of those characters, which kind of goes back to characterization, apart from obviously the bad guys, show this real freak of honor, of being honorable. Like Wesley is clearly honorable. Inigo is one honorable. Fezzik, the giant, is honorable. He's like, when Vizzini asked him like to throw a rock at the Dread Pirate Robert's head, he decides he's not going to do that because that's not honorable. He's going to like throw it near his head first, and then he's going to like, you know, once the good guy Robert knows he's there, then he's going to kill him because that would be the honorable thing to do. So I like how defined and how absolutely straight down the middle, the good guys were good and the bad guys were bad. It kind of, I guess, in a way, made them be a little bit cardboard cut out, particularly the bad guys. But the good guys, and Ennio is a classic example. Yes, he's like kind of the heart and the soul of that whole thing.
Exactly. And you're right, you know, it's interesting. Vicini he is kind of cardboard cutouty. Like, you know, the fact that he's going to kill a young girl, no, couldn't care less. I'm just going to kill her. And Humperdinck, yeah, I'm just going to strangle her strangle her on our wedding night. I mean, these are bad guys and they don't think anything about it, that they're just going to kill this young girl who is a pawn in their, their evil schemes.
Machinations, yeah. Well, I mean, that's true. Like, Vincini is, I think, a typical cardboard cutout, very two-dimensional. You don't understand any, other than he's probably a gun for hire, you don't understand any of his motivations, right? You understand Humperdinck's motivations to a degree because he's a bad guy as well, but he wants to start a war between the two countries, obviously, so he can, like, take one over. So him being evil and wanting the Princess Bride dead is has some depth to it because we understand the motivation of that is for his greed. It might not be great motivation, but at least, you know, he has one. So we actually, of them all, Vizzini is the one that like is really kind of more the cookie cutter sort of guy, you know, the guy with the twirling moustache and, you know, hiding behind a rock kind of thing and ready to kill somebody. But Humperdinck is more nuanced, and I think even Count Rogan, the six-fingered man, again, bad guy, but you get more of his backstory and we see, you know, we kind of see a little bit more of his motivation to a degree. He's clearly always been bad. You get that. But he's more developed. This we talk about characterization, about how even your you know, sort of smallest characters should be rounded to a degree so they can be understood, so readers can understand their motivation, so the actions they take in the book or they take in the film are understandable and not like weirdly off track and confusing people.
Yeah, that's right. Because you can throw somebody out of a story very, very quickly if you haven't motivated a character properly and then they do something and like, why? I don't get it. Why are you doing that? So yeah, it's really important to motivate our characters well. So if we were going to talk about a Hollywood moment, for example, was there one for you?
Oh, look, honestly, I think this film has, I guess maybe because I've seen it like 700 times. There's a lot of Hollywood moments for me. I guess a lot of Hollywood moments involve, you know, the Hollywood moments we talk about in the course. It's a phrase that Claire Connolly coined about what's that one moment that in any one film that, regardless of whether you've seen it or not, everybody knows about, right? And I think in The Princess Bride, I feel like it's the whole "as you wish" thread to me is, you know, kind of it's like I'm just a boy standing in front of a girl asking you to love her kind of thing. It's like, to me, "as you wish" is sort of that moment. What about you? What would you think is the Hollywood moment in the movie? I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that "as you wish" is that theme that comes through and we recognize the character in it. You know, it's I think it's actually the last line of dialogue in the whole movie. So we're left with that. Yeah.
It's a great bookend.
And yeah, bookending, which is, again, a really clever trick in terms of writing books or writing movies, is you start with something and you drop that theme cleverly all the way through. So, yeah, I think that works really well. But I mean, in terms of Hollywood moments, you know, we get Wesley and Buttercup are together at the end and it's so beautiful, and we know they're going to be together forever. But because it's so fantasy, there's so many moments that are very memorable, I think. And not just between Buttercup and Wesley, obviously, but between all the characters, you know, the interactions that they have. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right. I think the sword fight between Wesley and
that.
Montoya. That's amazing. I mean, that goes on for quite some time. That's like one of the sort of standout scenes from the film. That's quite iconic, isn't it? That's another.
And then when he goes, "Who are you? Who are you?"
And the Battle of Wits with Vincini. That scene, like that's quite sort of iconic to the movie. There's quite a few bits that's like stand out, and people who've watched the film, can sort of almost quote verbatim, like word for word, because they're like, these kind of like lovely moments. And I mean, this movie is kind of almost cultish in its
absolutely,
like it's real, So there's like, I don't know about you, but I will absolutely judge you if I slip in a Princess Bride reference to any conversation and you don't get it. I will absolutely judge you, because to me, everybody should have seen this film.
Well, it's good to know that I'll be your friend forever then, because I know nearly every word.
Absolutely. Can't get rid of me now.
So then, talking about dialogue, I mean, that's what I just love so much about watching it. And interestingly, I've watched it so many times, but actually pulling bits of dialogue out, you just go, this is genius, the way the dialogue is done. I mean, one of my favorites, he goes, when Indigo says, I just want to know, do you have 6 fingers on your left hand? And Wesley goes, do you always start conversations this way? Just little gems like that. And when the giant says, I can't help being the biggest and the strongest, and I don't even exercise, just little gems like that all the way through.
I think at the very beginning, there's a lot of lovely dialogue that's to do with love and romance between Wesley and Buttercup. Like he says, "Hear this now, I will always come for you." That made me kind of sweet a little bit when I watched it again. And this is true love. Do you think this happens every day? There's that. I love the Miracle Max line, rough to Miracle Man, and you get lousy miracles. I think that's a classic. Jeff cannot stop true love. That was another line.
Yes.
That go, like really sort of swoony. That's really, so great dialogue in this. And of course, As You Wish, obviously, is the thing. The thing that I kind of noticed watching it analytically this time, and it's probably veering off track a bit, but that I hadn't know. Obviously, I guess I had noticed it, but I hadn't really clocked it. Was sort of the fairy tale symbolism that you can kind of pick out sort of throughout it. Like I really noticed at the end when Fezzik the giant has 4 white horses there at the end, and it's like how more fairy tale can you get? Like charging off into the distance, on a white kind of horse. I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't really noticed that before. And we were talking about Princess Buttercup before, how she kind of grows a spine, and in the end, you were talking about that, how everybody has like kind of chased around after her and like try to free her and find out where she is and get her back, and in the end she sacrifices her freedom to him in after the fire swamp. So he's kind of gone after her to save her life and to save her from the kidnappers, and then she sacrifices her sort of what she wants for him. She thinks if she goes with the prince, then his life will be spared, and she suddenly steps up. After being useless in the fire swamp, she steps up and says, no, I'll go with you, just promise to me that he'll live. And that was a real like swoony kind of moment for me as well. I was like, oh, finally, after like, doing nothing in the fire swamp, you actually finally have stepped up.
Yeah, and that she actually sacrifices herself really,
her freedom.
To keep him alive. Yeah, her freedom. That's right. Another one of those lines that I'm so glad I know, because I'll stay your friend forever, is the whole Vicini inconceivable.
Inconceivable. Every inconceivable is a Hollywood moment. Yeah.
And Indigo goes, I do not think that word means what you think that means. I just love it. Yeah.
I know,
Really,
I know. It's so all the characters in this film are, are so good. Just like even the Mel Brooks character, not Mel Brooks. Who am I thinking of? The pitted
yeah,
there.
the albino. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
the
God, I
albino.
just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's Mel someone
yeah,
like yeah. His role is amazing too. Miracle Max, great. All the characters are just really, really well done.
yeah,
Great
exactly.
characterization. Mm.
Yeah, and obviously as we go through, I mean the tension is there the whole time through a whole lot of different means. I mean, obviously, Wesley's trying to save Buttercup, but he's got to save Buttercup before she drives a stake into her heart. Well, a dagger. So there's all these sort of milestones along the way, so that we're kept engaged the whole time about and the clock is ticking. This is another one that works so well, doesn't it, in novels, is having a ticking clock. So in this, getting married to Humperdinck is the ticking clock. So Wesley has to get there before she gets married. And that is a brilliant setup from the beginning, once she gets kidnapped. So that's another really good device to use in novels, is the whole ticking clock thing, to get tension in all the way through the novel or the movie. Yeah. So I really like the way that was.
And I like how the two plots converge. So the plot to rescue the princess, to rescue Buttercup, and the plot for Inio to kill the six-fingered man converged to all be at the castle at the same day, while as that clock's ticking along. Whilst Inio and Wesley had that fight, and they were had two separate goals, two separate purposes in that story, they actually kind of converged because they both needed to be in the castle so they could help each other. I think that was really clever how those plots sort of started out here and kind of came together and managed to get them both what they wanted at the very end.
Yeah, and that also leads back to characterization as well, because one of the things that people love about characters is that they're expert in something. So we have two characters who are complete experts. So you've got Wesley, who seems to be an expert in everything, what can he not do? So you kind of love him for that. Yeah. And Inigo as well, he's an expert sword fighter. I mean, he was, you would have thought he was the world's best until he meets Wesley, who's better. So that's also a really good thing to think about in terms of characterization, and having readers or watchers love your characters is give them something they're a real expert in. And that works well.
Yes, that's true. And the fact that what made Inio so perfect, I think, was that he could have seen the fact that Wesley was better than him as a challenge, or something to hate him for, something to want to kill him for, but he admired him. He admired Wesley for that. He just found in this other person this sort of almost like the mirror image of himself, and he was celebrating that. There could have been another choice made with that character, which wouldn't have felt right, because that's not the way that that Inio has been portrayed right from the start. So I'm so pleased that William Golden didn't decide to, or the Rob Reiner anyway didn't decide that Inio was going to sort of turn on Wesley or try to get rid of him, because only I can be the one expert in the world, sort of thing. I love that.
Yeah.
Inio loved Wesley right from the beginning, right? Admired him and loved him and respected him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, everything about this movie is.
Which makes them a better rounded character. Sorry, yeah. Which makes them a more rounded character. We're talking about not having cardboard cutout characters. Those kind of subtleties, those kind of choices that you make, makes your character more three-dimensional, more not necessarily likable, particularly if they're a bad character, but more relatable, more understandable, like even more empathetic, or the reader can feel more empathy for them if you have these little nuances of character rather than having this very, two-dimensional sort of character that nobody understands because you just don't know enough about them.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, really important. Yeah, and again, I would say that that's what we see when we look at judging competitions with new writers. Is often the characterization isn't quite there yet. So that is something that you develop over time. You get to know this, and doing this kind of analysis on, whether it's books or movies, you see how the masters do it so brilliantly. So do we think
which
they're
is
going
why
to be
another
together?
reason why we say it's another reason why we say, about how important it is to read as part of, your whole writing journey is to read, because if you read enough books and you read enough books that are really good and where authors that do these things really well, it starts to inform you. You kind of learn this stuff then sort of by osmosis then, the whole how do you set up a character. You learn it because you read the way other authors do it, and it sort of slowly starts to infuse into your brain and helps you when you're kind of forming your own characters.
Yeah, and I think that's very true also of plot structure. If you read a lot, I knew this when I very first started to write. You do know that there are certain turning points you have to hit to make something feel satisfying for the reader. But what I found interesting as I went along and learned more, that there were probably a lot more turning points, and some of them quite subtle, that I didn't know about until I did a lot of work on structure. But you do get the essence of structure from reading a lot. So absolutely, reading a lot is so important. And doing this kind of thing is analyzing brilliant movies. Why do they work so well? Is incredibly useful for becoming a better writer.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So, Amy, do we think that there's going to be a happy ever after?
It's interesting, I think, with this movie, we talk about the HEA guarantee. That's an Ali Blake term about, what part in the book, the bits in the book where the reader knows that once the end happens in the book, that the hero and heroine are actually going to, or the couple are actually going to be okay in real life. So the little everyday kind of, moments in a book where, like, the hero might help the heroine out around the house, or that's a very bad example. But, it's not all grand gestures, right? It's kind of in the little things, right? And I don't know that we really saw this particularly in this film, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you think so. I think in the beginning we see, yes, he's come off being the Dread Pirate Roberts, and, they're going to live happily ever after as, in that fairy tale kind of way. But we already know that, he can look after horses, and that he can, rake hay and do all those kind of things as well. We already know that he helped her out in the beginning when he worked for us, as the farm boy. So I suppose in that way, we know that that their life together is going to be, that they're going to make it at the end. What do you reckon?
Oh, yeah, they're going to make it in the end. And, it's only till we just talked about it now where I wonder, where are they going to go? So do they go back to the farm? I mean, does she take off all her jewels and the dress and go back, and he's lived this adventurous life and she's lived in a palace. I've never thought about, where are they going to live? There you go. And I've seen this movie.
Yes, I mean, she's not a princess. She's not a princess, and also as the little boy pointed out, what do you mean Prince Humperdinck doesn't die? He doesn't die at the end, right? He's just, so, in their future, is there going to be some kind of revenge thing? And I think that's the thing with fairy tales, and I guess also why they made the decisions they made, is that you don't ever really, think about those kind of like sort of unfinished threads, right? Because there he is sitting in his chair all tied up. Well, someone's going to get him out of that. What's going to happen next, kind of thing. But it's the love story, this amazing love is going to kind of, conquer all sort of thing, and the rest doesn't matter. But, that is, it is kind of interesting. I feel like they'll go back to the farm and be very happy and content to live, very sort of ordinary life, if Humperdinck lets them, of course. But yes.
That's right. Humperdinck, stay away. And on that note,
actually, before we finish, can I just say, I was thinking about, you were talking about structure before, and I was thinking throughout the movie about the black moment, because I think there's a few black moments throughout, and they're different for each character, right? So, like, I think Wesley's black moment is when he's being tortured, right? That's kind of his really low moment, right? There's that terrible scene where he can't even talk, he just cries, and that's just like gets you right in the throat, right? That's his kind of lowest moment, because he's a very heroic creature and he's literally been broken down into this, this helpless, man. It's just all pain and agony. And I think for Inigo Montoya, the black moment is when the six-fingered man actually, like stabs him and in the stomach, and he thinks, oh, I'm going to die before I get to kill this man that killed my father. What about you? Did you have any thoughts about black moments throughout, or?
Absolutely. And definitely those two. And then obviously Buttercup, her black moment is she's married and she's sitting there with a dagger about to thrust it into her chest, and there's Wesley lying on the bed. So she gets that close.
And I think maybe a black moment is even a bit before that, when she realizes that Wesley hadn't come for her.
Died.
She just was convinced up to that very last second that he was going to come. So I think the moment where she's like, he didn't come, that even is probably the moment. And then she goes on immediately after about to thrust the sort of dagger through her heart. But I think it's when we talk about structure in novels, as we do in the courses, and we talk about sort of black moments, because the black moments are the point in the novel where everything seems lost. And if there's not that, there's been no conflict. And if there's been no conflict, there's been no story. So it all works together in the structure of a novel, right? So it's great to look at movies and look at how they do their black moments. I think it's really instructive for when you're when you're doing your own writing.
Absolutely. And how they go from the all is lost, like how on earth is it ever going to be good again? And how they go from there to the resurrection and the ending that is such an important book moment in a book or in a movie, and how they come through that and out the other side. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I think we're nearly there, Amy. So is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up one of our all-time favorite stories, The Princess Bride?
No, I think we've gone through all the ins and outs. I would say if you haven't watched it, do watch it. I'm going to set myself a bit of a goal to actually read the book. I'm going to download it and I'm going to read the book just to see if I can do a comparison for the next time I watch the movie. And read it, analyze it, see if you think the same things that we kind of thought as we were going along. That's it, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And if there are writers amongst you and you're keen to boost your craft or your career or your productivity, check out our suite of offerings at the How to Write Academy. You'll find the links below. And come and join us where we talk about all these aspects, but in a much more depth, and how you can apply them to your own writing. So we'd love to see you there. Come join us. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.